Once upon a time, we have all been told that on average, bishops are slightly bit more valuable than the knights. However, you probably have observed in master games that bishops are actually quite often exchanged for the knights. Today we're going to take a look at 5 common strategic ideas and reasons behind such an exchange. The first very common scenario where bishop does get exchanged for the knight is when we induce damage in opponent's pawn structure. For example, after white plays the move a3, it is true that after we're capturing the knight, we're giving white the so-called bishop pair advantage. However, as a compensation, we're leaving white with damaged pawn structure, and they're not gonna get undoubled without the help of black. One of the biggest mistakes that students make when they just start playing such openings is they follow this kind of idea of creating a damage in opponent's pawn structure by a move like d5, which in fact allows white to simply undouble their pawns, for example, taking and taking, and now white could just enjoy the bishop pair advantage without really black having that compensation of damage in opponent's pawn structure. A much better way of following this up would be to try and attempt attacking the vulnerable weak pawn on c4. It is considered a weakness because it cannot be guarded by other pawns, and one of the ways white could get into trouble, not of course without playing a few inaccuracies, would be the following. Black plays a move like bishop a6 and starts attacking c4. White does not sense the danger, they're just, for example, defending the pawn with the bishop. Now knight casually goes to c6, and we're simply trying to put severe pressure on c4. Maybe our queen could even be lifted later to c6, and we're hoping that white will get their pieces passively defending the pawn, and black can take over the game. And I don't think any of us would see the bishop pair advantage here. We just see a weak pawn that is getting pressed, and there is a paralysis in white's army. This does not mean that a3 gives like necessarily an advantage to black, but this is one of the ways how black can exchange the bishop for the knight and be happy about continuing the game. The second very common reason to exchange the bishop for the knight is when we're trying to facilitate a defense. Take a look at this position. If I had the black pieces, I would be very anxious in this position because I see lots of white's pieces close to my king. That is, in other words, a kingside attack that white is having. After a casual move, let's just make a random move like rook to e8, white could be playing something like knight to d6 with very active knight and even a fork. And after we take that, because we have huge pressure from that knight, white could have lots of potential for all sort of attacks. In order to defend this, what black chose is a very nice defensive strategy. They're exchanging this knight on e4, giving up their very beautiful bishop in fact, and then playing the move g6. And take a look how the bishop on e4 cannot pose any threats, and the bishop on b2 is also closed. So neither the light square, neither the dark square bishop got into the game, and black can continue the game with putting the knight on a beautiful outpost and continuing playing against the damaged pawn structure of white. The third reason to exchange the bishop for the knight might be to attack. This is a relatively simple idea, but white has a battery that looks at h7. There is a very loyal and vital defender of black's king, the knight on f6, and therefore white could try an idea bishop to g5 with the idea of removing the knight and following it up with taking on h7. Even if black does not fall for this obvious checkmate threat, white's still strategic idea is relevant to exchange a defender of the black's king so that we would continue the attack and have easier way of creating the threat. The fourth reason why we may want to exchange the bishop for the knight, and this is again very common, is to get control over a key square. This is a known position from the Sicilian opening, and black has this very weak square on d5. if you've seen some of my previous videos, you know that the way we try to play against a weak square is by trying to establish a piece on that square and maintain it there. So in other words, white's dream is a scenario where we place the knight on d5 and we're able to maintain a piece on that square. We don't want to obviously drop the pawn, but neither a lot of times white wants to take back with the pawn in case that knight gets captured. And currently black seems to be fighting for this square quite well. So white uses the move bishop to g5, which tries to get control over the key square d5. So for example, after a move like bishop e7, white is able to, for example, remove the knight now or later and establish that knight on the d5 square. The fifth reason, last today, but definitely not least, is to simplify the position when having material or positional advantage. I think with material advantage, it's too simple to show you guys. If you're, for example, a piece up, a rook up, a queen up, we all know that we should exchange the pieces because it simplifies the conversion stage. It becomes easier. In this position, I chose a positional advantage. If you observe the knight on d4 and compare it to the bishop on g2, this is what we call good knight against bad bishop. The knight is on a dominating outpost, untouchable by the bishop, untouchable by white's pawns. Knight cannot get better than this. This bishop of ours is considered the so-called good bishop because it's opposite color to our pawns. It can also be called, I guess, active because it has a couple of active diagonals to look at. And if we just compare these two pieces, you might have an argument that they're equal. Maybe if I just look at this knight and my bishop, you may take, some might say that maybe the bishop is slightly bit better. However, we humans, we like just to simplify and take such knights so that we would have this dominating knight against the bishop. And this is a lot easier to convert than by leaving more pieces for white. You never know when you could walk into like random fork or anything like that. And even though engines would not see a difference whether maybe you take or not, for us humans, a lot of times it's just much easier to simplify. The rule of thumb that I would like to give away here is that it doesn't matter what goes off the board. It doesn't matter even if you give up a very good piece for a bad piece. What matters is what stays on the board, and what stays on the board is long-term position advantage of having total domination with the knight over the bishop. Hope you enjoyed these 5 reasons. If you did enjoy the video, please give this video a like and subscribe to my chess channel. It's free and you will never miss a video. You can also consider hiring me as your personal online chess coach. My contacts are on the right. I will be waiting for your emails. See you in the next video and thank you for watching.